I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now. Just for a minute. Because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of story that stays with you. The kind that makes you look around at the people you love and wonder, do I really know them? Do I really see them? Mema. I'm 32 years old. And about 14 months ago, a plain white postcard showed up in my mailbox. No return address. No message. Nothing written on it at all. Except for 3 small blue flowers drawn in the corner. And when I saw those 3 blue flowers, my stomach dropped completely through the floor. 'Cause I knew what they meant. My grandmother was in danger. And she couldn't tell a single soul. If this sounds like something you need to hear, and I promise you it is, hit subscribe right now. 'Cause I'm gonna tell you every single thing that happened. From the very beginning. Let me tell you about my family first because you need to understand the setup before any of this makes sense. We're a big family. The kind that does holidays loud, argues about football, and has at least one aunt who cries at every birthday party. My grandmother Rose, we call her Grandma Rose. She's the center of all of it. Has been my whole life. She's 78 years old, sharp as a tack, with this laugh that sounds like it was designed specifically to make a room feel warmer. She raised 4 kids, buried a husband, built a life. And she is, without any question, the person in this world I love most. Olivia. Narrator's tone shifts slightly. Still warm but cautious. My cousin Olivia is 29, 3 years younger than me. And for as long as I can remember, Olivia has been the family's golden girl. And I don't use that phrase lightly. I mean it literally. She was the one everybody talked about at Thanksgiving. The one whose accomplishments were announced like headlines. Graduated top of her class. Worked in non-profit fundraising. Volunteered at the food bank on weekends. Posted about it too. Not in a braggy way, just in a way that always somehow made other people feel like they should be doing more. She was charming. Genuinely charming. The kind of charming that wraps around you before you realize it's happening. And she absolutely adored Grandma Rose. Or at least that's what it looked like. Every family gathering, Olivia was right there next to Grandma, holding her arm when she walked, refilling her water, laughing at her stories like she'd never heard them before even though she'd heard them 50 times. I noticed things though. Little things. The way Olivia would gently steer Grandma away from conversations that didn't include her. The way she'd answer questions that Grandma was perfectly capable of answering herself. The way she always seemed to know exactly what Grandma had been doing, who she'd talked to, where she'd gone. I brought it up once. To my mother. She looked at me like I'd just said the sky was green. Emma, she said. Olivia is devoted to your grandmother. I wish more people in this family were half as attentive. That was pretty much the template for every conversation I'd ever try to have about Olivia for the next 3 years. You're jealous. You've always been jealous. Olivia is a good person. Why do you always have to find the negative? So I stopped saying it out loud. But I kept watching. I need to back up, way back, to when I was about 9 years old. My grandmother used to tell me stories about growing up during a time when women weren't always believed. When asking for help wasn't always safe. When you sometimes needed a way to say something without actually saying it. One afternoon, I remember it was summer, and we were sitting on her back porch shelling peas like she used to do. She told me about a code she and her best friend used when they were girls. If one of them was ever in a bad situation and couldn't say so out loud, they'd leave a certain mark. A signal that said, I need help. Something's wrong. Come find me. And she said to me, I remember this clearly, she said. Every woman should have someone she trusts with a code like that. And right there on that porch we made ours. If Grandma Rose ever mailed me a blank postcard with 3 blue flowers drawn in the corner, that meant she was in real danger and couldn't speak freely. We wrote it down in a little notebook. She kept a copy. And then we never talked about it again because why would we? Life went on. Nothing happened. It became one of those sweet grandmother-granddaughter memories you tuck away and don't think about much. Until the postcard arrived. I stared at it for a long time before I called her. I needed to be calm. I needed to be careful. Because if Olivia was there, and I had a sinking feeling she was, Then one wrong word could make everything worse. Grandma Rose answered on the second ring. "Emma, sweetheart." Her voice was bright. Too bright. The kind of bright that people use when they're performing for someone in the room. "Hey, Grandma," I said, keeping my voice light. "Just calling to check in. How are you feeling?" "Oh, wonderful. Olivia has been here all week. She's just been such a blessing. Taking such good care of me." I felt my jaw tighten. "That's great," I said. "Hey, I was thinking about coming to visit soon. Maybe this weekend." Tiny pause. Then, "Oh, maybe give it a little while. Things are a bit busy here right now. Some guests stay longer than invited, you know how it is." Small laugh. Completely casual. I nearly stopped breathing. Some guests stay longer than invited. That was the second part of the code. Something we'd added later, laughing, thinking we were being clever. It meant, she's here right now and she's listening. My grandmother had just told me, in the middle of a cheerful phone call, that she was a prisoner in her own home and the person keeping her there was standing close enough to hear. Kept my voice normal. We chatted for 3 more minutes about nothing. The weather. TV show she liked. When I hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot of a grocery store for about 15 minutes, just staring at the windshield. And then I started making a plan. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my aunt. I didn't tell a single family member what I was doing. I drove to my grandmother's town the following Thursday. Took a personal day from work. Didn't post about it. Didn't tell anyone. Olivia wasn't there when I arrived. She'd apparently gone to run errands, which, as I'd later learn, was not an accident. Grandma Rose had quietly told her there was a plumber coming, because she knew I was on my way. The moment the door closed behind me, my grandmother grabbed both my hands and held on tight. "I've been waiting," she said. And her voice, the real one, not the performed one, was exhausted in a way that hit me right in the chest. We had maybe 2 hours. She showed me everything. 3 months earlier, she'd noticed money missing. Not huge amounts at first. Small withdrawals she didn't remember making. She'd mentioned it to Olivia, who gently suggested that Grandma was probably just forgetting. That maybe it was time to let someone help manage her accounts. That the stress of handling finances alone wasn't good for her health. Grandma Rose, who has managed her own money since she was 22 years old and raised 4 kids on a teacher's salary, had let Olivia convince her to add her to the accounts. "I felt so stupid," Grandma said. But she was so kind about it. So patient. Once Olivia had account access, the withdrawals got bigger. Always with explanations that made sense on the surface. A repair that needed cash. A medical bill that got lost. A mistake at the bank that she'd take care of personally. And there was more. A power of attorney document. One Grandma Rose had never seen before. Had been filed 3 months ago. Grandma's signature was on it. But Grandma had no memory of signing it. And the date on the document was during a week she'd been sick in bed with a respiratory infection. Olivia had also quietly contacted most of Grandma's friends and relatives, with deep, concerned, loving explanations of how Grandma was struggling, how her memory wasn't reliable, how it was best not to overwhelm her with too many visitors right now. She'd been isolating her. Methodically, with a smile on her face. I took photos of every document. I wrote down every account number, every date, every name. I hugged my grandmother for a long time before I left. "Be careful," she said at the door. "I will," I told her. "You trust me." She looked at me with those clear, tired eyes and said, "Emma, you're the only one I sent the postcard to." I made one more attempt with my family before I went to professionals. Called my mother. I told her what I'd found. I told her about the account access, the power of attorney, the isolation. She was quiet for a moment. And then she said, "Emma, I think you need to take a step back. Olivia has been there for your grandmother in ways that none of us have been." This sounds like jealousy talking. There it was. The word that always appeared like a shield whenever anyone pushed back on Olivia. Called my uncle. He said Olivia had already mentioned to him that I'd been acting strange and paranoid lately, and that he hoped I'd get some help. She'd been preparing for this. Course she had. She'd pre-inoculated the family against me before I ever made a move. I stopped trying to convince family members. Called an attorney instead. What followed was 2 months of the most careful, methodical work I have ever done in my life. The elder law attorney I hired, a woman named Patricia who had the energy of someone who had seen every version of this story before and was done with all of them, moved quickly. The power of attorney had forged signatures. A handwriting expert confirmed it. The dates didn't match Grandma's medical records from that week. The bank records showed systematic transfers, always just under the amount that would trigger automatic fraud alerts. Whoever was doing this knew exactly what they were doing. And then the investigator Patricia hired found something that made my blood run cold. Olivia had done this before. 2 elderly neighbors in a town she'd lived in 4 years ago. An elderly woman from her church. All of them had reported suspicious financial activity after Olivia had spent extended time in their homes under the guise of caregiving. None of the cases had been prosecuted. Not enough evidence, said one, and one family had declined to press charges. This wasn't impulsive. This was a pattern. Practiced, deliberate pattern. Meanwhile, Grandma Rose continued to play the role of a grateful, mildly confused, elderly woman who relied completely on Olivia. She was, I have to say, remarkable. She fed Olivia just enough dependence to keep her comfortable, while quietly preserving every document we needed. Grandma Rose, at 78, was running a longer con than the woman trying to rob her. The family gathered for my grandparents', my grandmother's, annual spring dinner. The first Sunday in April. Happened every year like clockwork. 40-something people. The whole family. Olivia, of course, was there. She'd been instrumental in planning it. She'd arranged the flowers, organized the catering, made sure Grandma Rose was seated at the center of everything. She moved through the gathering like a professional. Warm, gracious, attentive. Patricia and I had sent a digital folder to 3 people we trusted before I arrived. My Uncle David, who I knew had started to have doubts, a family friend who was a retired banker, and Grandma Rose's closest longtime friend. I arrived late. By design. When I walked in, Olivia smiled at me from across the yard. The easy, confident smile of a woman who believed she had already won. I walked over to where my grandmother was sitting. I kissed her on the cheek. She whispered, so quietly only I could hear, "It's time." I stood up. I said in a voice loud enough to carry, "I have something I'd like to share with the family. Something that couldn't wait any longer." The yard got quieter. Olivia's smile didn't move. But something behind her eyes did. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I just started talking. I explained the postcard. I explained the code. I explained what I'd found when I visited. The accounts, the withdrawals, the power of attorney with a forged signature. I read the dates. I named the amounts. I described the pattern. And then I said, I hired a licensed investigator. What she found is that this is not the first time. There are at least 3 prior victims. The cases are documented. I opened the digital folder on my phone and passed it to the retired banker standing nearest to me. The yard was completely silent. Olivia laughed. Actually laughed. That specific laugh, sharp and dismissive, that's designed to make the person being laughed at feel hysterical. "This is insane," she said. "Emma has always had it out for me. Everyone here knows that. This is jealousy, plain, simple, ugly jealousy." "The handwriting analysis is in the folder," I said calmly. Page 7. The forensic accountant's report is on page 11. The prior incidents report is on page 15. Olivia looked at the banker. He was not looking at her. He was reading page 7. "Grandma," Olivia said, turning to Grandma Rose with wide, hurt eyes. Tell them what I've done for you. Tell them." "Olivia," Grandma Rose said quietly. Olivia stopped. "I sent the postcard," Grandma said. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life. What happened next is burned into me permanently. Olivia's face changed. Not all at once. Gradually. Like watching a mask dissolve. The warmth went first. Then the smile. And what was left underneath was something I'd never seen on her face before. A cold, calculating fury that she'd apparently been keeping behind the performance for years. She started talking fast, rationalizing, explaining. The withdrawals were for expenses Grandma had agreed to. The power of attorney was a misunderstanding. The handwriting analysis was wrong. But by that point, half the room was reading the documents. My aunt, the one who'd always been Olivia's biggest defender, sat down very slowly in a garden chair and put her hand over her mouth. My Uncle David, who'd been standing near the back, walked over and stood beside me without saying a word. Olivia looked around the yard. At the faces of the people she'd charmed for years. At the expressions shifting from confusion to hurt to something colder. Left. Didn't say goodbye. Walked to her car, drove away. And that was the last time most of us saw her. The investigators had already reported their findings. The Attorney General's Elder Fraud Unit opened a formal investigation 2 weeks later. It took about 6 months for the charges to be filed. My grandmother's accounts were restored. The power of attorney was invalidated. The financial damage, while significant, was recoverable. Grandma Rose moved back to full independence. She changed her locks, updated all her legal documents with a new attorney of her choosing, and, I want you to really hear this part, started hosting a monthly lunch for other elderly women in her neighborhood to talk about financial safety and what to watch for. She turned her experience into something. She always does. We sat on her back porch a few months after the gathering. Same porch where we'd made the code all those years ago. She poured us both sweet tea and looked out at the garden for a long time. She said, "You know what I've learned, Emma?" I said, "What, Grandma?" She said, "People believe the charming ones because charm is easier to trust than truth. Charm doesn't ask anything of you. Truth makes you uncomfortable." She looked at me. "You believed me," she said, "because you listened. Not because I was charming. Because you actually listened." I didn't say anything. I just took her hand and held it. And I thought about all the people in my family who'd looked straight at the signs and chosen not to see them. Not because they were bad people. Because they were comfortable. Because Olivia had made their comfort her primary tool. Danger doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always look threatening. Sometimes it looks like the most helpful, most loving, most devoted person in the room. Sometimes it draws 3 blue flowers on a blank white postcard and hopes that someone out there is paying enough attention to understand. I was paying attention. And if you've been paying attention, if someone in your life is sending you signals you've been trying to explain away, I want you to stop explaining. Start listening. Really listening. Thank you for staying with me until the end. This story matters. Stories like this matter. If this reached you, if it made you think of someone, if it made you feel seen, if it made you want to check on an elderly person in your life, tell me in the comments. Just one line. "I'm checking on someone this week." That's enough. New stories post every single week. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves. And take care of each other.